The hospital corridor smelled of harsh bleach, sterile plastic, and heavy, suffocating despair. The quiet afternoon hum of the floor was broken only by the rhythmic squeak of my yellow mop bucket as I rolled it down the hallway. My 6-year-old daughter, Jada, was sitting quietly on a bench by the nurse's station, reading a picture book. She had to stay with me during my weekend shift because I couldn't afford a babysitter. My hands were rough and callous from years of manual labor. My oversized blue janitor's uniform was faded at the knees, and my heavy boots were scuffed. I was exhausted, just trying to finish my shift and get my girl home. Suddenly, a loud, frantic crash echoed from a private pediatric suite down the hall. A group of top-tier specialist doctors in crisp white coats practically tumbled out of the room, looking terrified. Behind them stood Victoria Sterling, the billionaire CEO of a global pharmaceutical empire. Her tailored emerald pantsuit was wrinkled, her dark hair was coming loose from its perfect bun, and her face was twisted in an ugly mix of panic and pure frustration. Inside the room, her 8-year-old son, Liam, who was nonverbal and autistic, was having a massive, terrifying sensory meltdown. He was sobbing silently, throwing plastic medical trays against the wall, rocking violently on the floor, and scratching his own arms in distress. "Do something." Victoria screamed at the chief of medicine, her voice cracking with desperation. "I fly you people in from across the country, and you just stand there? He's hurting himself." The chief doctor swallowed hard, backing away. The sedative is too risky with his current heart rate, and any physical restraint will worsen the psychological trauma. The machinery and monitors are overloading him. We have hit our medical limit. Victoria snatched a designer pose, pulled out a thick, leather-bound checkbook, and slammed a heavy gold pen onto the nurse's counter. $750,000, she roared, her voice echoing through the entire wing. "I will write a check for $750,000 cash right now to any doctor, specialist, or person in this hospital who can calm my son down before he severely injures himself." The doctors looked at each other, then looked down at the floor in absolute silence. No one moved. The money was useless. I looked through the glass window of the suite. I saw the boy's wide, terrified eyes, drowning in a sea of overwhelming noise, bright fluorescent lights, and panic. Now, look, I am a quiet man. I'm a single dad who mops floors to put food on the table. But before I ever picked up a broom, I spent 10 years as a specialized therapist and sound engineer in the military's acoustic trauma unit, helping nonverbal veterans process severe sensory overload. I knew exactly what that boy was experiencing. It wasn't anger, it was a sensory prison. I looked at Jada, who gave me a small, trusting nod. My heart gave a hard, violent thud against my ribs. I dropped my mop. My heavy boots made a loud, solid thud against the linoleum as I walked straight past the wall of doctors and pushed open the door to the private suite. "What are you doing?" "Get this janitor out of here," the head nurse snapped, scanning my faded uniform and the dark skin of my hands. "You don't belong in this wing." I didn't look at her. "Turn off the lights," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was a low, dangerous growl that cut right through the screaming in the room. "Excuse me." Victoria hissed, her eyes widening in offense. "Who do you think you are? Security, remove this man." "Victoria, shut up," I said, turning my head slightly to look her dead in the eye. The sheer, unyielding authority in my gaze made the billionaire freeze mid-sentence. "Your doctors fail because they are trying to fix him with words and needles. He can't hear you over the frequency of those fluorescent bulbs. Turn, off." The chief doctor, sensing my absolute certainty, quickly hit the master switch. The blinding overhead lights died, plunging the room into a soft, dim twilight, every fiber of MY being locked into absolute focus. I walked over to the corner of the room, completely ignoring the broken glass and spilled medicine. I slowly sat down directly on the hard, cold linoleum floor about 3 feet away from Liam. I didn't reach for him. I didn't try to hold him down. Instead, I leaned my back against the wall, closed my eyes, and began to hum. It wasn't a song. It was a very specific, low-frequency, rhythmic drone, a 432 hertz baseline hum using acoustic therapy to mimic the deep, calming resonance of a mother's heartbeat in the womb. I pulsed the vibration from deep within my chest, keeping the tempo perfectly steady. Liam froze. His violent rocking stopped. The silent tears stopped tracking down his face. He slowly lowered his hands from his ears, his big eyes blinking in the dim light as he focused entirely on the deep, soothing sound vibrating through the floorboards. Slowly, carefully, the boy crawled across the floor. He leaned his head gently against my shoulder, his entire body exhaling a massive, trembling sigh of relief as his heart rate monitor slowed down into a perfect, steady rhythm. Within 3 minutes, he was fast asleep against my chest. The room went completely, utterly silent. The doctors stared through the glass in absolute shock, their medical charts trembling in their hands. I gently laid the boy onto the bed, tucking him in, and stood up, smoothing down my janitor's apron. My face remained dead calm. Victoria rushed into the room, falling to her knees by her son's bedside, tears streaming down her face. She looked up at me, her flawless, corporate composure entirely shattered into a million pieces. She grabbed her checkbook with trembling hands. The $750,000, she stuttered, her voice suddenly very small as she looked at my faded uniform. Please, take it. Who are you? What clinic do you run? I will buy you any research facility in the country. I don't run a clinic, Victoria, I said, walking toward the door and picking up my mop. I'm the guy you complained about yesterday morning because my cleaning cart was blocking the elevator. You all look at the uniform, the skin, the clothes, but you always forget. You forget that the man who cleans up the mess is often the only one who knows how to fix what's truly broken.